is a blind person who lacks both eyes, so he casts an unlucky throw. It's kind of like a throw of the dice in both respects. Okay, the person described as one-eyed is a hypocrite who seeks wealth, sometimes righteously, sometimes unrighteously. Yeah, so I guess the point about the one-eyed person is that they have a good business sense of business acumen, skillful in doing business, but they don't know how to discriminate what's good and bad, what's wholesome and unwholesome. And so because they lack that moral discrimination, moral discernment, then they're willing to resort to immoral means to increase their wealth. That person, we could say, is pretty rare, you think? No? Common. Oh, and then some more is said about the one-eyed person, that by means of thievish, cheating acts, and by means of false speech, this man indulging in sensual pleasures is skilled in amassing wealth. Oh, very strong words about him. Having gone from here, from this world to hell, the one-eyed person is tormented there. I think one has to resort to very, very unwholesome, immoral means to acquire wealth in order to create such powerful, unwholesome karma that one meets that destiny. I think many people who engage in business might cut edges here and there, take the shortcuts here and there, but they're they're not engaging in such strong, such dishonest, unscrupulous acts of cheating that they're going to go to hell. Okay, then the best kind of person is the one with two eyes. So this one acquires wealth by his own effort, righteously, and then with good intentions, with the best intentions, he then gives generously. And so this person goes to the excellent state where one does not sorrow. Okay, so then the last verse speaks about right association. So one should avoid from afar the blind one and the one-eyed person, but should associate with the person with two eyes, the best kind of person. Okay, what's interesting about this sutta, if you remember, sometimes I make a distinction between three kinds of aims or purposes for which the Buddha's teaching is directed. One is the good that relates to life here and now. The second benefit is the good of a favorable, a fortunate rebirth. And the third benefit is the ultimate liberation, nibbana, enlightenment, liberation. So this sutta works entirely within the scope of the first two kinds of goods. Good relating to life here and now, and good relating to a future rebirth. So the sutta is probably, even though I think it's addressed, even though the Buddha is speaking to the monks, but he's not speaking with reference to the kind of ideal that a monk should pursue. But this is speaking with reference to people, householders living in the world, particularly those who are engaged in business. So you could say that a sutta like this would probably be more relevant to somebody like Anathapindika, the Buddha's chief patron, and other lay supporters of the Buddha, telling them that, instructing them in how they should live within the world. And so, by means of, we say, the principles of right livelihood, one earns a living in a way that doesn't involve any kind of cheating and dishonesty, which doesn't inflict violence on others, which doesn't exploit others. And in dealing with one's customers, one deals with them honestly, sets a fair price for one's goods, but enough that one could make an adequate profit. One doesn't deal in kind of illicit commodities like selling weapons, poisons, drugs, slaves, prostitutes, and so on. Okay, and then one also sets one's aim, one's ideal, one's aspiration here not on ultimate liberation, but on a favorable rebirth, a good rebirth, by practicing actions like observing the precepts, the 5 precepts, and practicing generosity. And so, by conducting oneself in that way, then one will acquire the kind of meritorious karma that will lead one to a rebirth in an excellent state where one does not sorrow. So unless one is ready for full liberation in this life, at least as a kind of tentative goal, we have to aim for a good rebirth. We don't want to engage in the kind of karma or actions that's going to lead us to rebirth in the lower realms. Okay, we can move on now to the next sutta. We'll take several suttas, then I'll ask for questions. So this is called inverted. Let's see what the Pali is. Yeah, the Pali here, it's avakucha panyo. So kucha is like, ava means down and kucha is turned. So this is wisdom or knowledge or understanding that's turned upside down. Then the next is uchanga panya. Uchanga must be the lap, a person's lap when you sit down. And then putu panya. Putu is wide, spread out, vast, wide. Okay, so we have 3 kinds of persons. The one with upside down wisdom. So that's not really wisdom, but it's almost like the opposite of wisdom. So that their understanding is upside down. And then we'll see what is the person with lap-like wisdom, and then the person with wide wisdom. And this sutta, I have to say right now, a little bit word of warning, it's relevant to you, all of you, right now, as you'll see. So, what is the person with upside down wisdom? Here, some person often goes to the monastery to listen to the Dhamma from the monks. Okay, so the monks teach the Dhamma that is described as Adi Kalyanang, Majje Kalyanang, Pariyosana Kalyanang, good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, and so forth. Okay, so while that person is sitting in his seat, he does not attend to the talk in the beginning, the middle, or the end. Nowadays, we could see the person would be sitting there with while the monk is talking on the Dhamma, they have their cell phone sort of under the table so that the monk doesn't see what they're doing. But the monk, if he has sharp eyes, he could see the shoulders sort of twitching. Or in the days before there were such distractions as cell phones, the person might be sitting and then the eyes start to get a bit heavy and then they're dozing, or else just looking around, or maybe they show that they're very diligent by writing, but if the teacher passes by to look into their notebook, he sees that that they're sketching little pictures and images. What do they call that? Is that doodling? Doodling? Okay. Okay, so while sitting at his seat, he does not attend to the talk at the beginning, the middle, or the end. Okay, then when he rises from his seat, he still doesn't reflect on what he heard or try to bear it in mind. Okay, so this is compared now, there's a simile. This is like a pot that's turned upside down. And so if one tries to pour water into a pot that's upside down, then the water will just run off the pot and doesn't stay there. So that is the person with upside down wisdom. Okay, so this is the person, next is the person with lap-like wisdom, and we'll see why the text uses that expression. Okay, so this person goes to the monastery to listen to the Dhamma. The monks teach the Dhamma, and while this person is sitting in his seat, he attends to the talk in the beginning, the middle, and the end. But after he is risen from his seat, he doesn't attend to the talk in the beginning, the middle, or the end. And so this is like, it's a little odd simile. So it's like a person who might have, I would say it, that they have maybe a towel on their lap, and in the towel there are various kinds of foodstuffs, sesame seeds, rice grains, cakes, jujubes, it's a kind of fruit. Okay, and then that person gets up from the seat without mindfulness, and when they get up, then all of the grains and seeds and cakes that they've been holding in their lap, all of those things get scattered over the floor. And so how does one assure that this doesn't happen when one goes to the monastery to listen to the Dhamma from a monk? How does one assure that not only is one paying attention during the talk, but that one retains what one learns after one leaves the premises? What is a good way to ensure that that doesn't happen? I think if we have, do we have the other microphone?
You try to memorize what you heard, review and reflect what you heard.
Of course, that's a good way, but nowadays people don't have such sharp and keen memories that they could immediately just listen and then get up and then the next day remember exactly what they heard.
Go to YouTube and read
No. Seriously, no. Exactly. You take notes. Okay, so like I've been teaching and people have been coming to this class for years, and sometimes I say, okay, we come across a sutta on the 5 aggregates. I say, what are the 5 aggregates? So many blank stares. And so I've never heard the expression before. Well, what are the 5 hindrances? Let's see. Jealousy, conceit, drowsiness. I got 3 of them, didn't I? Okay, so to ensure that one preserves what one has learned, sort of the first step nowadays, well, the first step is to listen, the second step is to take notes, then the third step, what would be a good third step? You're taking notes during the class. Exactly. You refer back to them, or you review the notes. And then when you see the essential points in the notes, then you can memorize them. So when we look in the suttas, and this was a time before there was writing, the Buddha speaks about 5 steps in learning the Dhamma. We see this in many suttas. I think when we come to the book of the 5s, then we'll get these 5 steps. So the first step, let me see if I could remember, okay, is that one listens to the Dhamma that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end. One listens to abundant Dhamma, so one has heard much of the Dhamma. The second step is that one retains in mind the Dhamma that one has heard. See, in those days, because it was a pre-literate culture, so people's capacities for remembering were much better than they are today. I think one of the effects of growing up in a literate culture is that the particular brain functions that are able to retain things and preserve them in memory, particularly things one hears spoken, those particular nerve currents or brain functions atrophy, they become weaker. Okay, so one retains in mind what one has heard. And then the third step is that one repeats or recites verbally what one has heard. And this is done by the Buddhist monks this was done in the past by the Buddhist monks who specialized in memorizing the scriptures. And still there are monks in the Buddhist countries who do that, who memorize whole collections of suttas. And they still do that today. It's the custom, I think, in Burma that they have evening recitation. I haven't been in Burma myself, but I heard from some friends who stayed at some of these study monasteries that in the evening, the monks go out on the veranda or on the courtyard and they walk back and forth, just repeating over and over the texts that they studied during the day in order to imprint them on the memory. So it's by verbal recitation that one can memorize. And what I found is back years ago, I used to memorize texts. Now I've gotten lazy. But what I found to be a useful way to memorize is first using the book to recite over and over with the book in front, so that one does this. Like if one wants to memorize a sutta, one will do this every day for a couple of weeks. So then you get familiar with the particular sequence of sounds. So then you decide that I want to memorize the sutta. And so one will first memorize maybe a paragraph one day, and then one still is reciting the sutta with the book in front, but one memorizes the first paragraph one day, then the next day you add the second paragraph, third day the third paragraph, like this, until, lo and behold, you've memorized the sutta. Okay, so that was the third step in learning the Dhamma. So first, listening, retaining in mind, verbal recitation. Then the fourth step is investigating the meaning, examining the meaning. Because the task is not just to become like a parrot, able to recite Evang me sutang ekang samayang bhagava. A parrot can do that, or a tape recorder can do that. But the aim of learning is to gain wisdom. And so to get wisdom, one has to understand the meaning. And so one has to investigate and examine what is the meaning of the Dhamma, of the Sutta. And then once one understands the meaning, even that's not enough for the Buddha. So one wants to gain actual wisdom, and so for that you have to penetrate the meaning with wisdom. And that comes only through bhavana, through the actual practice, cultivation of the mind, cultivation of insight. Well, the last step is actually called penetrating the meaning or the Dhamma or the principle with wisdom. But what I say is that comes through bhavana, through meditative cultivation. Okay, so that is now the second person, the person with lap-like wisdom. Then comes the third person. This is the one who often goes to the monastery, listens to the Dhamma. Then when he's sitting in the seat, he attends to the talk at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Then after he rises from his seat, again he attends to the talk in the beginning, the middle, and the end. In this pre-literate culture, that would mean that he probably reviews it and tries to recollect what was said during the talk, at least to draw out the essential principles. And then the simile compares this to a pot that is upright, and so when you pour water into it, then the water will go into the pot and it will stay there and doesn't run off. And then the Buddha says that of this last person in the verse, he said that this person, mind undivided, retains what is heard, and practicing, then going on and practicing in accordance with the Dhamma, he can make an end of dukkha. I remember 3 similar similes, but I was not able to trace them in the Pali suttas. Perhaps they come from a commentary or from another tradition, but the similes compare persons to 3 kinds of pots. One is a pot, let's see, with holes. It's like sort of like perforated at the bottom. And so when you pour water into it, then the water comes in, and because there are holes, big cracks in the pot, the water just immediately drains out of the pot. So that is like the person who doesn't pay attention to the Dhamma. Okay, then the second simile is that of a pot that seems to be intact, but it actually has very subtle, like little cracks and little holes. And so you don't see the water streaming out from the bottom, but you pour the water in, and then maybe the next day you go to get some water, and only half the water is left. So because there are these little cracks and little holes, so the water is coming through the little cracks and holes. And then the third pot is the pot that's fully intact, that's able to keep the water. Does anybody know where that comes? Is anybody familiar with that? It doesn't sound like it's necessarily Mahayana. I think maybe I saw it in Venerable Yinshun's Way to Buddhahood. But he could have gotten it from the sutta from the Sangyukta Agama, one of the Agama counterparts of the Nikayas. Anyway. Okay, any questions so far on the 2 suttas that we've covered? Yeah, please take the wireless microphone.
On the first sutta, when you were talking about the qualities listed, it seems like they're almost the same that's needed for both the worldly life and the spiritual life in some ways, because the diligence and all that to succeed in one world is required in the other. It's just, it seems like it's inverted, how one uses one's gifts or talents.
Yeah.
But when I was reading it, it seemed like, oh my goodness, all the qualities needed to, because I've kind of tried to live both sides. And yeah, it's...
Yeah, I mean, that's the point that I made. I think that one eye is the eye to succeed. The first eye is the eye to succeed in the worldly life, and the other eye is the eye to succeed in the moral and spiritual life. Yeah. Any other questions?
Bhante, one thing, when you were talking about retaining the teachings, is that why you think the Buddha would have been so repetitive, or was that just the way they spoke in India at that time to make it easier to retain it?
I think it's quite possible to to facilitate retention. Okay, so let us move on. Okay, so this is a sutta on, say this, instructing, it's praising the care for mother and father. So here the Buddha says, he says that those families dwell with Brahma. So he's using, adapting his teaching to the Indian milieu, in which the Brahmins, the followers of Brahmanism, would worship the god Brahma. And so he says those families dwell with Brahma. Today we might say that those are godly families, where at home the mother and father are revered by their children. And then he says those families dwell with the first teachers, the primordial teachers. Those families dwell with the gift-worthy, or the holy ones, the saintly ones, where at home the mother and father are revered by their children. And so the reason the Buddha praises care and reverence for mother and father, because mother and father are helpful to their children. They raise them, nurture them, and show them the world. Okay, so mother and father are called Brahma, first teachers. They're worthy of gifts from their children, for they have compassion for their offspring. Therefore, a wise person should revere them, show them honor, serve them with food and drink, with clothes and bedding, by massaging them and bathing them and washing their feet. Well, I didn't do any of that for my parents. Okay, because of this service to mother and father, the wise praise one in this world, and after death, one rejoices in heaven. Well, what do you think about this in terms of contemporary American society? Seriously, where I know a lot of people have trouble even relating to their parents, let alone honoring them and revering them, because of the way the parents treat their children. Isn't there sometimes like a cycle of violence that gets passed down from parents to children, then from those children when they become parents to their children? Cycles of violence, abuse. But anyway, maybe this is sort of setting an ideal standard. Take the microphone.
Oh, there we go. So does this mean that that family is literally blessed by different devas? Why is it under sort of this term of Brahma?
No, I don't think that is to be taken literally. It's more because the Buddha is saying that Brahma is a designation for mother and father.
Okay.
So you can say that the family has Brahma when the mother and father are respected.
Right.
A sort of divine-like family.
I see. Sounds almost Confucian, but...
There's a pretty high degree of correspondence between Indian culture in regard to the attitude towards parents and Chinese
sort
culture,
of
Confucian
crossover
culture.
between...
Wait, take the microphone.
In Sri Lanka, before the children leave for school, they bow to their parents, and if they're sitting down and the parents come home or whatever, they not have to, but they rise and pay respects when the children
there
come.
are certain codes of etiquette that children are expected to show towards the parents. Like Sam just mentioned, probably in the morning after the family gets up, then the children will show special consideration to the parents. When they leave for school, they bow to the parents. I've seen this myself during my years in Sri Lanka. In the evening, before the children go to bed, they'll bow to the parents. And then it seemed to me, I don't know everything on the inside of families in Sri Lanka, but that the bonds of the relationships are much closer and more loving between children and their parents. Whereas in America, because of the secularization of our culture, the relations have become much more, it's passed from that level of respect of children for the parents to, like the parent tries to treat the children as being friends or buddies, so it becomes a relationship of parity, of equality, and so that respect gets lost. You need a little distance to maintain respect. If you get too much like buddy-like with the children, then they're going to lose the respect. And then once you get buddy-like, and then the parents start imitating the children and the behavior of the children, and even following the kind of music that the children are following, the clothing styles that the children wear, then the children completely lose respect for the parents and start ridiculing them and rejecting them. What is that?
I said, it's like you're out in the world. This is exactly what's going on. You're in the monastery. I said, it's amazing how you know all this. I mean, it's like you're out in the world every day seeing. But you're so dead on. It's true. This is exactly what's going on in society.
Yeah. I think, if I remember Plato's Republic, Plato describes exactly the same situation. Back was the year 400 BC. He speaks about how a society becomes corrupted. I think it was towards the end of the Republic. It's when the parents start imitating the children. I'll have to find that passage. But not now. Okay, let us move on. Okay, so now we go from, this is what's interesting about the Anguttara Nikaya, the way one jumps from one topic to another, one doesn't know what to expect next. So now we come to the next sutta. This is with Ananda as the inquirer, completely different topic. So Ananda comes to the Buddha and says, could a monk obtain such a state of concentration, it's a samadhi, a state of samadhi, that he would have no eye-making, mind-making, and underlying tendency to conceit in regard to this conscious body, or this body together with consciousness. So here, eye-making, in Pali, this is ahankara, mamankara, mananusaya. So ahankara is literally making an eye, and this is taken to be like the expression of forming a view about the self. Mind-making, is mamankara, is taking things to be mine. So that's an expression, manifestation of craving and grasping. And then the tendency to conceit, this is especially the conceit of asmimana, the conceit I am. And so those three things, the view of self, craving, and conceit, arise in regard, first of all, to this body together with its consciousness. So when we say the body together with consciousness, so the body is the aggregate of form, and then consciousness, by mentioning consciousness, all of the four mental aggregates are implied. What are the four mental aggregates in the traditional order? Let's see who has the wide wisdom and who has the lap-like wisdom. Okay, the four mental aggregates. In the classical order, wait, I have to call on the people. Okay, you had 1, 2, 3. What is your name? Natalie? Youth?
Nakaway.
Nakaway.
Yes. So Vedana, perception, sankhara, and consciousness.
And the last one?
Consciousness.
Yeah, very good. Very, very good. Okay. So it was a mixture of Pali and English, but got them correctly. So Vedana is feeling, Sanya is perception, Sankhara are the volitional formations, mental activities, and then Vijnana is consciousness. So we have the 4 mental aggregates together with the rupa, the physical body. So that is sort of like the first base in which I-making, mind-making, and conceit arise. And then Ananda continues, he would have no I-making, mind-making, and underlying tendency to conceit in regard to all. The Pali uses the expression bahiresu nimitesu. No, bahida nimitesu. Yeah, bahida sabanimitesu. So he would have no I-making, mind-making, and underlying tendency in regard, underlying tendency to conceit in regard to all external objects. So generally, one doesn't take external objects to be the self, but one takes, especially with external objects, those are mine. And then one could build up conceit on the basis of external objects. I have the better computer than you, I have a nicer phone, cell phone than you, I dress better than you, I'm the best dressed guy in the world, I'm the wealthiest, the most powerful, yeah, I'm doing a great job. Okay, so external objects. And then the third is that he would enter and dwell in that liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, to which there is no more I-making, mind-making, and underlying tendency to conceit. Okay, then there's a note here, number 28. Okay, there's nothing special there. Okay, so Ananda is asking the Buddha whether it's possible for a monk to obtain such a state of concentration. One wonders why Ananda should ask that question of the Buddha. Probably because there were various states of samadhi, like the jhanas, that didn't have those characteristics. So Ananda is asking whether there is a kind of samadhi in which all I-making, mind-making, and conceit have been eliminated. And then the Buddha replies that there is. Then Ananda asks, how does one obtain that? Then the Buddha says, here a monk thinks thus or reflects thus. this is peaceful, this is sublime. Yeah, this is the stock formula for Nibbana. So that is the stilling of all activities, the relinquishing of all acquisitions, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, Nibbana. So it's in this way that the monk could obtain such a state of samadhi that he would have no eye-making, mind-making, and the underlying tendency to conceit in regard to this conscious body, in regard to all external objects, and he could dwell in that liberation of mind. So what is being referred to here, this, it seems, it's not simply that the monk is sitting down and reflecting, this is peaceful, this is sublime, but he's actually entering into a particular type of samadhi. And this samadhi is what is called in the commentaries the fruition attainment of arhatship. Arahata pala samapatti. And so the practitioner, like starting from ground zero, goes through each of the four, achieves each of the four paths. The path of stream entry eradicates the coarsest level of defilements. The path of the once returner starts to weaken the remaining greed, hatred, and delusion. The path of the non-returner cuts off the next layer of defilements, including sensual craving and aversion. And then the fourth path is the path of arhatship, which cuts off the subtlest defilements. And also it's the path of arhatship that eradicates the asavas, the underlying tendencies to sensual craving, to craving for existence, and ignorance. And so with the attainment of the path of arhatship, then the practitioner achieves the fruit of arhatship, the arahata phala. And the fruit of arhatship is a state of, it's a meditative attainment, a state of samadhi in which one can directly experience nibbana, the unconditioned. And the arhat has permanent access to that attainment. It's not that he's always in the attainment of fruition, but when he wants to sort of withdraw completely from the experience of the world, then he will sit and make the determination to enter into this fruit of arhatship, the attainment of the fruit of arhatship. And he does this by turning the mind to the qualities of nibbana, that it is the peaceful, the sublime. And when he does that, then within a matter of split seconds, all conditioned phenomena drop away, and the meditator will remain absorbed in the bliss of nirvana, according to the duration of time that's been predetermined. If one wants to remain in that state for 20 minutes, one will be in 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, even for a whole day, or even several days. One could sit absorbed in that tranquil bliss of nirvana, and then when the predetermined time comes to an end, then one emerges from it. Okay, so that is that state of, here it's also called the liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, to which there is no more I-making, mind-making, and underlying tendency to conceit. And then what's interesting is that the Buddha then says that this is what I referred to, and he's referring to a collection of verses, or a collection in verse, called the Parayana. The Parayana, the verses or the chapters of the Parayana were collected and then put into a book of the Pali Canon called the Sutta-nipāta. So the Parayana is now the last chapter in the Sutta-nipāta. But the Sutta-nipāta as a collection probably arose sometime later because it's unique to the Theravada school, even though chapters and suttas in the Sutta-nipāta exist in other traditions. And so from this we can infer that the Parayana existed originally as an independent collection. And it's a very beautiful collection, very profound. Okay, and then the Buddha cites this verse from the Parayana: having comprehended the highs and lows in the world, he is not disturbed by anything in the world, peaceful, fumeless, untroubled, wishless. I say he has crossed over birth and old age. It's very beautiful. Sankhaya lokasmin paro parani yasinjitang nati kuhinchi loke santo vidumo anigo niraso atariso jati jaranti brumi. Okay, so this is a sutta spoken to Ananda. Now there's another sutta, very similar in some respects, in which Sariputta is the chief figure. So here Sariputta comes to the Buddha. He doesn't ask a question, but now the Buddha just says to Sariputta, I can teach the Dhamma briefly, I can teach the Dhamma in detail, I can teach the Dhamma both briefly and in detail, but it's those who can understand that are rare. And now Sariputta makes a plea to the Buddha, please teach the Dhamma. So he says, it's time for this. Please, he says, O Blessed One, teach the Dhamma briefly, teach in detail, teach both briefly and in detail. There will be those who can understand the Dhamma. This is very similar to the scene, if you remember, where after the Buddha's enlightenment, when he's sitting close to the Bodhi tree, and then he decides, it's too difficult to teach the Dhamma. I'll just stay back quietly and won't make the effort to teach. Then Mahabrahma, or Brahma Sahampati, comes before the Buddha, and then he pleads with the Buddha, please teach the Dhamma. And he uses the exact same words. He says, there are those with little dust in their eyes. There will be those who can understand the Dhamma. Okay, and then the Buddha gives the instruction to Sariputta. He says, therefore, Sariputta, you should train yourselves thus. There will be no I-making, mind-making, and tendency to conceit in regard to this conscious body. It's in regard to these internal five aggregates. No I-making, mind-making, and conceit in regard to external objects. And we will enter and dwell in that liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, through which there is no more I-making, mind-making, and conceit. Okay, and then the Buddha says that when a monk has no more eye-making, mind-making, and underlying tendency to conceit and so forth, then we jump to the end. He is called a monk who has cut off craving, pulled away the fetter, and by completely breaking through conceit, he has made an end of suffering. And then the Buddha quotes from another verse in the collection, the Parayana. This section is called the Questions of Udaya. And this is interesting. He says, the abandoning of both sensual perceptions and dejection, the dispelling of dullness, and the keeping away of remorse, with equanimity and mindfulness purified, preceded by reflection on the Dhamma. This, I say, is emancipation by final knowledge, the breaking up of ignorance. And if we look in the Pali, well, for those of you who have some knowledge of Pali, okay, so it's pahana kama sanyanang, domanasana chubayang. Chubayang means and both. Okay, so what's eliminated here is perception of that's sort of governed by sensual desire, and domanassa, which is sadness or dejection. Okay, then the dispelling of tina. Tina is sloth or dullness, mental dullness, and the keeping away of kukucha. Kukucha is remorse. So it seems to be suggested here in this stage, in this verse, anybody have any idea what sort of is indicated here? The sort of Abhasara.
I get the hints of the hindrances.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah. So the kama sanyanam, sensual perception, is sort of hinting at or suggesting the first hindrance, sensual desire. Then domanassa, sadness, seems to have some connection with ill will, domanassa, vyapada. So we could see that as being referred to. And then the dispelling of tina, dullness. So that is the third hindrance, tina mita, dullness and drowsiness. And then the warding off of remorse, that's kukucha, and that is part of the fourth hindrance, udacha kukucha. Okay, then the next verse we have with equanimity and mindfulness purified. Okay, we could see in Pali, and this makes it clearer what's being sort of alluded to. Upeka sati sangsudang. So what seems to be indicated here? This is a phrase, a standard phrase that comes in a particular formula. Anybody see what's being sort of referred to? Maybe we need the microphone.
The fourth jhana.
Yeah, very. This is almost exactly the same phrase that's used in the formula for the fourth jhana. It's just the fourth jhana formula has parisuddha, but that is, I think, shortened to sangsudha for metrical reasons. And so with equanimity and mindfulness purified, so if we just take up to this point, it seems to be describing first the removal of the five hindrances, which opens the way to any of the jhanas, and then with equanimity and mindfulness purified, we have an indication of the fourth jhana. And then if we jump here, this, I say, is emancipation by final knowledge, the breaking up of ignorance. Does that make sense? To say that the fourth jhana is emancipation by final knowledge, the destruction of ignorance. Anybody have a opinion about that? Okay.
I get the impression that the equanimity he's speaking about here refers to the equanimity that comes from the penetrative view that sees the rise and fall of wisdom, and the emancipation
Yeah.
is the bana, the cessation of...
But it seems when it says with equanimity and mindfulness purified, that expression corresponds exactly, almost exactly, to the expression that's used in connection to the fourth jhana. Okay, but let me just give my opinion then. Is that it's a little bit difficult to identify the fourth, in fact, it's impossible on its own to identify the fourth jhana with emancipation by final knowledge, the destruction of ignorance. So probably with this line, preceded by reflection on the Dhamma. Let us see what the Pali is. It says Dhamma taka. Taka is thinking or reflection. Pure javang is running before, coming in advance. Oh, I just see another way of interpreting this. Instead of taking, in fact, instead of translating this preceded by reflection on the Dhamma, one could take all of this, okay, upeka sati samsudang, to mean which precede Dhamma taka, not that would make better sense. Okay, 34. No, the commentary explains it in a sense that this is the forerunner of emancipation by now. Okay, that is so. Well, the sense, the way the commentary is taking it is that reflection on the Dhamma is what precedes emancipation by final knowledge. Not that reflection on the Dhamma precedes equanimity and mindfulness purified. Okay, so in this case, now it would start to make sense that first, with the first verse, it's indicating the abandoning of the five hindrances. Then with this line, first line of the second verse, is indicating that one advances up to the fourth jhana, then there will come what is called reflection on the Dhamma, which would not be just intellectual reflection, but it's a way of maybe sort of pointing to the development of insight based on the fourth jhana. And then it's through the development of insight that there comes first the breaking up of ignorance, issuing in emancipation by final knowledge. Sometimes in verse, because it has to fit the meter, we have to change the order of lines to get the actual intended sense. So now it makes good, if we take it that way, it would make good sense. Okay, first, overcoming the 5 hindrances. Second, attaining the jhanas up to the 4th jhana. Then with reflection on the Dhamma, one moves into insight into the Dhamma. Then through insight comes the breaking up of ignorance. And with the breaking up of ignorance, that breaking up of ignorance is final knowledge. And the final knowledge brings emancipation or liberation.